Last week, the Florida Gators lost their defensive coordinator, Patrick Toney. He is headed to the NFL. A lot of Gator fans aren't that upset about this. Do you think that this is going to be an improvement over last season? What kind of impact is Austin Armstrong going to have on this 2023 season?
I do expect an improvement because the scheme is not going to change all that much. This is pretty much the same scheme, but the tendencies within the scheme will change. So, Armstrong brings a probably more aggressive approach up front. He likes to blitz more. He likes to bring a lot of pressure. And that kind of overall stats, he did improve them from Southern Miss before his time and during his time. Overall, though, I wouldn't say they scream out so where every stat is great. Overall stats, they're okay, and I'm glad he improved. So what we saw at Southern Miss before, but he really excels in a lot of the stats for the havoc. He created tackles for loss, created sacks, created turnovers. Maybe gave up some big plays, some bigger plays because of the aggressiveness there. But I do think it's going to look a lot. The players are going to line up in a lot of the same spots and stuff like that. It's going to look the same. I just think the things he's going to ask his players to do, tighter coverage as well in the secondary, the things he's going to ask his players to do will be a little bit different than what Patrick Toney asked the players to do. And now, as I said, it is the same scheme pretty much. So these guys have experience in this scheme. So I do think, I expected a step forward anyway with this defense just because of more experience, but maybe the jump will be even more so now with Armstrong if they take to his approach faster than what they took to Patrick Toney's last year.
So we know fans weren't thrilled with Patrick Toney in 2022, but do you think that it had anything to do with Patrick Toney just maybe not being very good, or do you think it really was this new system and getting used to it, and then is that give an added advantage to Armstrong? Truly, kind of like you were just saying, it's year two of these guys no matter what. But do you think that maybe he is going to get a bump from what Patrick Toney installed, and Patrick Toney's maybe not quite as he's a little bit better than Gator fans maybe would give him credit for.
Yeah. The thing about Toney is I think it was probably a wake-up call of playing in the SEC. I do think, that's part of the process here. As I said, now I was willing to give more of a, positive outlook on being year two there is, maybe the experience paying off. They got rid of a bunch of guys too on the whole team, but specifically on the defensive side of the ball as well.
Right.
Who previous regime, previous staff guys who maybe just did not take to this defense there. And a lot of young guys played last year as well. And then they hit the transfer portal hard too. So I do think Armstrong really is just he's going to pay benefit of what Florida was able to maybe try and do as far as a rebuild on the defensive side, as far as defensive front goes, losing Jervon Dexter, but bringing in some transfers up front and just some guys going away from the program. So I think when you look at it, I do think there would have been an improvement anyway. I do like what I hear so far from Armstrong and his more aggressive approach. I like the speed Florida has up front. I'm not so sure they have the size there yet. So maybe taking into account his reputation for being able to apply pressure up front, I think Florida's got the speed to be able to do that up front.
And what does it mean? How much does it mean that Saban wanted him on his staff?
I think it means a whole lot because the thought is, they brought in Kevin Steele from Miami to take in to be defensive coordinator at Alabama, and the thought was Armstrong leaving his defensive coordinator role at Southern Miss to kind of be defensive coordinator in waiting. He was designated the linebacker coach at Bama, but it was more of a, hey, we're going to groom you and we're going to get you ready to take over whenever Kevin Steele, is it 1 year, is it 2 years? You're going to be the guy. I know, asking around that Will Muschamp and Kirby Smart both think highly of Armstrong as well. And, Georgia's got their defensive coordinator talking to NFL teams as well. And I was told, if that move would have happened sooner, and if it happens at all, Armstrong would have been a name that they would have been interested in as well as maybe given a co-DC role with Will Muschamp there at Georgia. So he's got the reputation in the right coaching circles. But Allie, that's been there before and it doesn't work out. But right now, for what we're seeing, if you got to say, hey, Nick Saban wanted me on his staff, I'm part of his staff. Of course, that coaching circle of Billy Napier and Nick Saban and Kirby Smart. It's a pretty that circle is pretty tight there, and you see a lot of guys who Billy Napier are bringing in. There's a connection. I mean, let's not forget Armstrong was an assistant at Louisiana as well before he went to Southern Miss as a defensive coordinator. He was a linebacker coach at Louisiana for Billy Napier. So there is a familiarity, and there's a familiarity with Nick Saban and Kirby Smart and Billy Napier, where they're talking to a lot of the same guys. And I think the biggest worry for me is, are you making him a defensive coordinator at the SEC level before he's ready? Is he ready to take over? Or is it still going to be this learning on the job, and you hope that doesn't maybe ruin some type of confidence along the way?
Well, and is that the problem that you had the last time around, and are you repeating it? But
Right.
how key is it, you mentioned Louisiana, that he has worked with Napier before, and how much of an advantage is that going to give him coming into Gainesville now?
Yeah, that's where I think not everything will be so new. He knows the expectations of Billy Napier. He knows the ins and outs of working for a head coach like Billy Napier. He knows the hours it takes. He knows the schedule. Nothing's going to be new there for Austin Armstrong and working with Billy Napier. So I think that's part where the experience pays off a bit of the system payoff of having pretty much the same system. I mean, because that's important. If he was under Patrick Toney, the defensive coordinator, the previous defensive coordinator for Florida. So that leads you to believe there might be some personal things that he wants to do different, but it's going to be within the same defense. The tendencies are just going to be a bit different.
Well, you talked about him being a little bit more aggressive than Toney. What are some other differences that you have seen that you think maybe were appealing to Billy Napier, not only for the 2023 season, but just for beyond?
He does this, this whole, Kirby Smart does it. We heard Patrick Toney say a lot about it as well, but this whole simulated pressures, it's basically you're bringing four rushers. The offense doesn't know which four rushers that you're bringing. And the simulated pressure of it is, you're hiding how you're going to bring those four guys there. So, there's a coaching clinic out there that he's been a part of on CoachTube there that I've watched a couple of highlights of so far. It's about a 25-30-minute video. I haven't been able to dive into the whole thing just yet. But, it's I like the way Patrick Toney, I got kind of frustrated with last year of the secondary just being so soft, and it was something we saw under Todd Grantham, and it kind of continued under Patrick Toney, where there's not a lot of man up in your face, not a lot of not only aggressiveness up front. I like that, but the aggressiveness on the back end there, as I said, in a way that could also lend itself to some big plays, but the aggressiveness all across the board, not just up front, but in the defensive secondary as well. I think that's the biggest difference that I kind of took away from some of the highlights that he showed of, hey, these are the things I want my defense to do. So I think the question is, how is he going to adjust to the personnel at Florida? Is he going to have his system and you got to fit in his system, or will he adapt to the personnel that Florida has? So I think Florida still got some questions on the defensive front. Does that kind of change the way he wants to do some things? That's why I think him coming in early and just kind of getting his feet wet this spring with this defense is going to go a long way. I don't know how much we'll get to see of that through spring and when the spring game gets played. But the schematic continuity there with Toney, I think, is important. But I think how much is he going to change within the same system, I think is really going to be key for this defense and how big of a step they can really take.
So UF has one of the toughest schedules in the nation in 2023 yet again, but it kind of starts off a little bit easier, and you find that the back half is really a lot more daunting than the front half. Do you think that this is going to help Armstrong be able to get the defense going quicker, get them a little experience against maybe some of the, I don't even like to use the word lesser opponents, but it's not the Georgia and the LSUs and the Florida States of the schedule?
Right. You open up with Utah, and here's the thing. That Utah offense, what they're going to do. If Cam Rising's going to be quarterback again. Now, will he be 100% healthy? I think is the big question, looking early on. But what type of offense, when you go to Salt Lake City, what type of offense you're going to play. So that's pretty good. You can concentrate more on yourself a bit. You don't have to scout the opponent so much. You're playing Utah last year. It's going to be pretty much the exact same offense. Then you get the quote-unquote cupcake, the second game of the season. We're all going to look at week 3 and how he adjusts to a high-flying Tennessee offense that could not be stopped by Florida all that much last year. year 3, he's going to get that early test of Tennessee coming to the Swamp. Now they got a quarterback change too. They'll be going to Milton instead of Hendon Hooker, who you played last year.
Milton looked pretty good in the bowl game, though.
He did. I think we like to go back to the previous year when he started the year there for Tennessee, and he kind of struggled, and that's why they made the switch to Hendon Hooker. But it did look like he was a much better quarterback than he was the year before when Hendon Hooker goes down with an injury and Milton takes over. So, you still know that offense, but that offense can put up points. So I do think we'll see how he adjusts to Utah in game 1 and their kind of ground and pound style and using tight ends. Something Florida struggled to do in game 1 last year. But I do think we'll get an answer pretty early because, as I said, you're playing 2 teams that you played last year. It's a good barometer of how much is improved from Patrick Toney to Armstrong. And I do think a lot of it for the players as well, playing in a very, very similar system, but it'd be year 2 for them.
All right, last question. I got to ask, what kind of recruiter is Austin Armstrong? That's something that all the Gator fans are wondering if we're going to be able to continue the upward trend with defensive recruiting that we've got going on right now.
I still say that's probably more of a wait and see. He's part of a Louisiana staff that Billy Napier was able to recruit well there with. So, and then, hey, look, as you said earlier, Allie, if Nick Saban wants you and you're on Nick Saban's staff, that probably also means you'll probably be a pretty good recruiter. He's not going to hire some guy he doesn't believe who can recruit well. So, young, energetic guy. I think, what you see a lot of in the South, but like I said, between those staffs of Saban and Napier and Kirby Smart, kind of in that mold of the coaches that they have recently. So I do think, just kind of looking at it on the surface, now we get to see how he recruits big boy ball. I would like to think, since he was Nick Saban's staff, that there's some trust there that he's able to recruit at a level that Alabama is used to recruiting at. So now let's see, once he gets to Gainesville, if he can able to recruit some big time defensive talent there as well.
All right. Well, thank you so much for hanging out with me. Let's do it again sometime. Tell everybody that's watching or listening where they can check out Gators Breakdown.
Yep, everybody can get Gators Breakdown at news4jax.com/Gators Breakdown. You can find it on YouTube, of course, and all the podcast platforms out there as well.
All right. Thanks so much, Dave.
Thanks, Allie.
Thanks for watching the video and for your support on the channel. If you hadn't, make sure that you're subscribed here so you don't miss our next video. And if you want to see a video that YouTube thinks you should watch, click here.